Well, hi, it's great to be back with you once again, and this time for episode 6 of Keysound TV. I can't believe where the time's gone. Before we go into this episode, thanks again for all your positive support that you're giving us, and it's wonderful to see the amount of subscribers going up month after month very, very nicely, so thanks for that, and thanks for your continued support. Obviously, we're about to enter our really busy period in the store. And I'm pleased to say that throughout the pandemic, it's been absolutely amazing, really, for piano and keyboard sales, based on the fact everybody was stuck at home and wanted something to do. So in fairness, and it's lovely to report, the music business actually has seen quite a surge in popularity, and I'm pleased to say that a lot of those people taking up piano and keyboard for the first time have fully immersed themselves on it, and long may it continue. But we're coming into our naturally busy period, so we've put together episode 6. Episode 7 obviously coming out in December, maybe a little bit shorter than normal, but it'd be a special little show because what we've done is got all our regular contributors, including myself, and a few other little surprises for you. We're all going to treat you to a little bit of Christmas music to get us all into the Christmas spirit. But so we look forward to sending that out to you. But back to episode 6, we've got another packed hour for you. We've got our regular contributors. We've got Andy Carvill back with us again. Mike Hall's been allowed out for the day again on day release, so he's doing something for you. He's going to kill me for saying this, but yeah, he's back with us again. And I'll be doing a few hints and tips, both on Korg and Yamaha, but I'm going to begin with a little piece put together by myself, and it was actually a special request for somebody for the James Last piece, Morning in Cornwall. Now, I'm going to take you through briefly how I went about setting the sounds up, and actually while I was recording that, it led me on to thinking about a few other things, so they will feature a little bit later. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to myself, that's right, and a little thing called Morning in Cornwall. Well, what I'm going to do now is a little arrangement of a piece of music. This is actually a special request for somebody, so I'm going to do this. I may, in one of the previous episodes, just played a little snippet of this, but I'm actually going to play the piece all the way through. I'm going to use it for a particular reason. I'm going to be using my Korg PA4X. We could just as equally use any of the Yamaha SX or the Genos, of course, to do exactly the same thing that I'm talking about now. How do I go about putting an arrangement together? Well, this little piece in question is one of these beautiful pieces from the James Last stable called Morning in Cornwall. And first thing I will always do is listen to the original recording and then sort of pick out the key sounds that are being used. So in the version I heard, James Last worked very closely with a very, very well-known panpipe player called George Zamfir. Now, he had a particularly haunting and distinctive panpipe sound, and I'm going to show you how we actually create that from the basic sample that's in here. Of course, James Last very famous for string sounds and that lovely warm brass sound that he used on the ballads. So how I've divided this up, I start with the panpipe. That's our sort of haunting solo voice to get us started. Then we go into a nice, rich, deep string sound. Then I will introduce the warm brass sound that we talked about. And then as a finale, we need the strings and the brass working together. And out of those 4 settings, I've then got my 4 main elements that I need. Now, I spoke about tweaking this panpipe sound from the original sample. This is really important thing to bear in mind with all these modern instruments. Sampling technology, particularly the state of sampling that we're at now, means that all of these sounds on all of these instruments are really, really accurate. But if you think in real life, let's take a clarinet for example. You can have an incredible clarinet sample, but it won't sound like Acapulco. Because Acapulco, well, first of all, he would use a particular reed to get a particular tone of that clarinet, but also he had the most amazing vibrato, and that's what made that distinctive sound. And then you could listen to the same clarinet voice or the same instrument, clarinet, played in a classical orchestra, and it will sound totally different. So what a sample can't do, as accurate as it is add that little human element that gives it that distinctive sound. You know, look at famous trumpet players. They all have a distinctive sound. You can almost, even without being told which one is Louis Armstrong and etc., you can almost pick it out from the crowd because they have such a distinctive sound. Think violin. You can certainly know when it's Stefan Grappelli, not just from the type of music being played, but from the sound. Again, he was an absolute master at vibrato on the instrument. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go into the pan flute and I'm going to go into the voice edit section. Now you've got this available on Yamaha. On the Korg, we go into menu and we go into track controls. And we have things called LFO. It's a frequency oscillator. In basic terms, it's vibrato. And think back to old organ instruments. You had 3 controls on vibrato. There was the depth, the amount of vibrato, the speed at which the wobble, let's call it the wobble, takes place. And then you've got delay. Now that is the delay between pressing the note and the vibrato coming in. So what I'm just going to do is, because I've already got my pan flute set, but I'm going to reset all these to 0. And then what you're going to hear is the actual sample as it is on the Korg. So nothing wrong with the sound, lovely, but it hasn't got that nice vibrato that I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the depth, and I don't know, let's maybe move it to about 14. Now you can hear there's more vibrato. Unfortunately, there's quite a long delay on that, i.e. I hit the note and there's no vibrato, and then after a little while it kicks in, which is fine for some pieces, but that's not what I want on this particular piece. I'm going to increase the depth a little bit more. I'm going to put it up to, say, 24. Right, now we're starting to get a heavier vibrato, but the wobble is still not fast enough. So I'm going to take that up to a similar sort of figure. Now when the vibrato kicks in, I'm more getting what I want. But I'm not quite there because I want to lose that delay. So I'm going to take that delay into a minus figure. Now I've got that vibrato basically kicking in straight away, and it's a much heavier vibrato. Have I got the depth right? I don't know yet. I'm going to go back now and tweak it a little bit more. What if I was to put it up to something like 50? Oh, terrible. So we know we can't go as high as 50. Let's take it back maybe to, well, what have we landed on here? 34. Still too fast. So let's take it back. 27. That's nice. I like that. So I've now got the sort of vibrato that I want. And you can hear now that vibrato is coming in straight away. So that's made our panpipe sound out. And that's really, really important that you have a go at these things. You know, the beauty of digital technology is you can't ruin anything, because unless I save that setting, if I switch off or go to something else, it's gone. So there's plenty of room, if you like, for experimenting. I've got a nice little effect, which I will talk about another time, but I've actually put a delay on that sound as well. So as well as having reverb, because you know these pan pipes, what's the guy's name? Manuel and the Music of the Mountains. It's got this long echo like you get if you were playing out in the mountains. But I've also put a delay where the sound sort of bounces away into the distance. Have a listen. You can hear it pinging off into the distance. All these little things are what you need to experiment to get the absolute best out of your instrument and the voicing that's in the instrument. Just before I play it, you know, in terms of effects like that, think guitars. You know, how many of us say, oh, Hank Marvin, what a lovely sound. You know, he uses a Fender Stratocaster. But a Fender Stratocaster doesn't just sound like that on its own. It's the effects that Hank Marvin uses, those lovely echoes and delays that he used to create that classic sound. If you took those effects away and handed that guitar to somebody else, it wouldn't sound like Hank Marvin. It might have the basic tone, but it hasn't got all those little frills and elements that make it Hank Marvin. So have an experiment. If you take the pan pipes, try and put a little bit more vibrato on, take the delay off. So let's go into this little piece. It is a beautiful piece, and hopefully you'll hear the way the registration builds up. We will be using our old friend, the pitch bend wheel, in a slightly different way this time. You'll hear it on the intro where I'm using it to bend the note off right at the end for a nice effect. So here we go with Morning in Cornwall. So there you go. I'd like to think a very effective arrangement. I didn't use anything but single notes in that right hand and just held chords with the left hand. It's all about getting the sounds and using the right sounds in the right place. You don't have to be this amazing player to create that sort of effect. So I hope that's helped. Just a little bit about how I sort of planned through something and how I've executed that panpipe sound that we needed. Morning in Cornwall. Well, there you go. Morning in Cornwall. I hope you enjoyed that. It certainly is a beautiful piece of music. And like a lot of these James Last melodies, they're not particularly difficult tunes in their musical makeup. They just, I always say, a bit unlike Eric Morecambe, he seemed to get all the right notes in the right order, and they always came together as these beautiful haunting melodies. And as I say, a bit later on in the programme, we'll sort of continue and explain further a few of the points that I've highlighted in that little section. So over to our very good friend Andy Carvill now, and he's got a real treat for you this time. A lot of people talk about improvisation, and Andy's going to sort of dip his toe in the water, if you like, with improvisation on this one, because it does include a little bit of that, but it's all based around one of the most popular chord sequences you'll ever hear. It's called the 12-bar blues. I'm going to leave you with Andy. He'll explain it. Hope you enjoy.
Hello and a very warm welcome once again to Keysound TV. My name is Andy Carvill. This is my Korg PA1000, but we're talking today about some musical topics which apply to any keyboard instrument that you may have at home, be that a digital piano or an acoustic piano or an organ or a keyboard, anything with a keyboard, black and white keys on the front. We're going to talk in this particular video about something called the 12-bar blues. Now, blues music is a little bit jazzy style of music. It's based also a little bit on improvisation. So we're just going to touch a little bit on improvisation. But we're going to talk about two main topics here. We're going to talk about the basic 12-bar blues chord progression. And we're also going to talk about how do we identify some notes to play with our right hand in sort of a melodic form. So the 12-bar blues, as the name suggests, is a chord progression which is 12 bars long, but it only uses 3 different chords. And some of our previous videos we've looked at how you work out the scale chords from a major scale. And the 12-bar blues is based on 3 of those chords from that major scale. Once again, I'm going to base this on the key of C major and the scale of C major, because it's just a little bit easier for you to see the notes that I'm actually playing. The 12-bar progression is actually very simple. You start with 4 bars, 4 measures of the one chord. So the one chord in the key of C is, surprisingly, C major. So we start with 4 bars of C major chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4, 4. And then we move to the 4 chord, which in the key of C, 1, 2, 3, 4, is the chord of F. So after our 4 bars of C, this is the 4th bar again. 1, 2, 3, we move to F. 1, 2, which we play for 2 bars. 2, 3, and back to C. And then we move to the 5 chord, which in the key of C is G. 2, 3, 4. Then to F. 2, 3, 4. And back to C for 2 bars. And then we just do it all again. So we go C, 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 move to F, 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 C, G, F, C. 2, 3, and then through again. If you think the 12-bar blues progression sounds very familiar to you, you're correct. You will have heard this hundreds of times in many different forms of music. The 12-bar blues is not only the basis of blues music, but also a lot of rock and roll music from the 50s and 60s is based on 12-bar progressions. So you will be very familiar with this progression. Now, so that's the basic progression. We're going to make one modification to that progression, and that is right at the very end, and that's the last measure before we start again. We're going to do what we call a turnaround, and that turnaround is just the addition of another G chord. So let's go through the progression again. 4 bars of C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 bars, 3, 4, 3 bars, 4 bars, to an F chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, to back to C, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now a G chord coming up, G, 3, 4, F, back to C. This time we do a G chord. That leads us back to the C at the beginning. So that's a little additional chord called a turnaround chord. And that means every time you want to go back to the beginning, which you can choose to do that as many times as you want to, because this is going to be your own little piece of music in a moment, believe it or not. Every time you want to go back to the beginning, use that turnaround chord, and the final time you want to finish, just stay on the C to the end. Okay, now, which notes though do I play with my right hand? Because we're going to do an original piece here. We're going to do an original piece of blues style music, which indeed lots of blues style music is original and sort of pretty much improvised. You may never have done this before and perhaps think, well, how do I improvise? And improvising is making up the right hand part. But you can't just make it up and randomly play any note. We're going to take a very special scale which we can use as a blues scale. We looked in previous videos at the scale of C major. It's just all the white notes. And I'm just going to change one note to change this into a more blues style scale. And what I'm going to do is, instead of playing a B natural, I'm going to play a B flat when I go up. So let's start, here we go, from C. All the same as C major, except now I play that note. And in isolation it sounds a little strange. But when you play the 12-bar blues style, you can play any notes from that scale and it will sound in a bluesy way. Now let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to put on a simple little style here on my Korg PA1000. This is called Chicago Blues, and it's a very bouncy, bluesy style of music that my left hand, just playing a C chord, is going to now reproduce like this. Change to my F chord. Here it goes. Already sounds like the blues without having to actually do anything with this hand at all. But now I'm just going to apply some notes from this blues scale. And all I'm going to do is actually mainly play 3 notes. And the 3 notes are here, and the notes are C, B flat and G. So let me start my accompaniment style, and I'm going to use these 3 notes here and just see how impressive this sounds. something very important in here, and that's actually more not the notes that I'm playing, because the notes I'm playing are very easy. It's 3 notes, and I did a G note and an F note and then back to those 3 notes again. But it's the feel of those 3 notes. And a blues style isn't square like classical music, so it's not. It's bouncy. So that skipping feeling in the right hand is very important, and that will make your melody notes sound much more bluesy. Now let me just change the sound here. Instead of this piano, I'm going to change to sort of an organ sound, sort of bluesy organ sound. And I'm going to use my left hand accompaniment style and just play through the blues a couple of times. We'll have a little count in. That's a very short way of producing some great blues sounding music. We've got a fantastic style here on the Korg PA1000 which suits that music absolutely down to the ground, and just using some very simple melody notes played in that bouncy style, you can create the sound of the 12-bar blues. Well, that's all for this video. I hope you found that useful and something you're going to give a try to when you're next practicing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye now.
Thanks very much indeed for that, Andy. You've just caught me. I'm actually in the middle of editing the program at the moment as we put this all together. And one of the bits I'm editing at the minute is a new idea we've had. We're just going to call them quick tips, because they literally only last a couple of minutes. This particular one, again, has come about through somebody asking the question. When you see the block chording, the automatic block chording on all these modern keyboards, you often see the words open harmony and closed harmony. Well, very briefly, I'm going to explain the difference. I'm going to do it on the Genos, but of course you can translate this to any keyboard instrument you wish. Okay, so here's a real quick tip for you. People often ask me, Paul, what is the difference between open harmony and closed harmony? You often see it when you go into the block chording, you'll see open harmony, closed harmony. Let's do this really quickly for you. Closed harmony, let's take C chords in different inversions as we go. So first inversion, C, E and G. Now we'll move the C up to the top. That's playing in closed harmony. Open harmony means instead of playing all 3 notes together there, what we do is we take the middle note out, which in the first case is the E, and we play that an octave lower. Then as we move up to the next chord, do exactly the same again, same again, same again. Now it's often used in this sort of rolling theatre organ set style. And what you heard me do at the end there was when we went from that to that, which is the next inversion, what I'm actually doing is rolling that bottom note. And again, this needs a little bit of practice, but you roll from the E to the G. And you get that lovely swirling theatre organ type effect. Let's give you a very quick example. Take the piece Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square. If I was to just play it as ordinary block chords, it sounds like this. Now we know it's correct, but if you wanted that really to sound authentic, sort of American theatre organ style, every chord you look at, and you need to work all this out, it doesn't happen instinctively. So the first chord there was an inversion of E flat, the middle note was an E flat. Let me take that out and put it down at the bottom, and just do that for every chord inversion, or every block chord rather, that you're looking at. Work out what the middle note is and drop it an octave lower, and you end up with this result. Totally different. So again, have a go at it. First of all, learn to hear the difference between that closed harmony, the close harmony if you like, and the open harmony, or the widespread harmony. To start with, as I say, just practice with some block chords, run up block chords in different inversions. Just over a couple of octaves, but then try it in open harmony. Have fun, give it a try. Well, there you go. So I hope you all now know the difference between open and closed harmony. And again, I don't apologise for keep repeating this. All these things we show you, it's down to you to just sit and have a go at them. It will make a lot more sense if you actually physically get your hands on the keys and try and copy what we're doing, and then you'll have a better understanding of how it all works. So you're going to continue, you've got me to put up with again for the next section. And again, you know, I'm pleased to say this has come from feedback from yourselves. A lot of people want to know, when they go and see a professional performer, yes, okay, their playing is at a certain level, but a lot of them now, including myself, will use overdub recordings, because that's what we're used to in day-to-day life in terms of music now. You know, when you, very rarely will you hear one musician play on their own. They're either with a band or an orchestra. Well, of course, as a keyboard player, we're limited. We've got two hands. And sometimes to achieve the effect we want to achieve, it's nice to add a couple of extra little parts. Well, I'm going to keep this really simple. I'm just going to record a piece and show you how we do one simple overdub, and then I'll show you how we can take the original part out so that we've still got something to play to. So once again, I'm using the GNOS for this, but the principle remains the same. If you work out how your multi-track recorder works on your particular keyboard, this will work exactly. So once again, over to myself, and we're going to use Blue Moon as the little piece of music, so enjoy this. It's all about double tracking or multi-track recording. So what we're going to look at in this next segment, and we're going to use the GNOS to do this, we're going to look at a simple way of doing a multi-track recording. In other words, the illusion of having more than one pair of hands. I'm going to keep this really, really simple in what we actually achieve here, but this is the building block for you to go on and experiment. First thing I always do is have the instrument set how I want it. Now in this particular instance, I've chosen a style called Jazz Guitar Club. By default, it came up at 150 beats a minute. I've slowed it right down to 110. If you're doing this for the first time, please try and pick a relatively simple piece of music to do it with. It doesn't matter how simple the piece, you're practicing the skills needed to produce a multi-track recording. So I've slowed this down, so it's a lot more manageable. In right 1, I've chosen a nice little piano. And in right 2, in advance for our overdub voice, I've chosen a nice jazz guitar. Obviously, piano and jazz guitar go well together, and we're doing a nice little sort of gentle swing thing. So that's going to work. So how do I go about doing this? Well, on the Genos, I just press over here the recording button. Now, I'm faced with 2 options here. I can either do a MIDI recording or an audio recording. Very briefly, the difference is if you do a MIDI recording, it will only play back successfully on the instrument it was actually recorded on, because a MIDI recording is just a series of codes and numbers. It tells you what sound you've used, which note you've pressed, how long you held it for, the velocity you hit the note. It is just a series of codes. So it will play back perfectly on the instrument in which it was recorded. Of course, if you did a MIDI recording and took it to a friend's house and they also have a Genos, it will play back perfectly on their Genos as well. But if I was to put that MIDI file into my Korg, yes, it will play, but it will pick up the wrong sounds because the sounds are all in different positions. It might even pick up different drum kits, so won't sound great at all. If you do an audio recording, that's like a CD. So that will play back using the Genos sounds on any device, not just a keyboard, any device which plays audio files. Televisions play audio files now. A lot of you will have a USB socket in the car now where the radio used to be. That will play audio files. Computers play audio files. So if you did a recording here and then put it into your computer, instead of picking up the computer sounds, which a MIDI file would do, it will be playing back the actual audio recording from the Genos, so you will hear the Genos sounds. And in the example I gave earlier, if I did an audio recording on a Genos, popped it into my Korg PA4X, it will play back perfectly using the Genos sounds because it is a proper recording of the instrument. So over the next couple of months, I will cover both. But I'm going to use the MIDI option here and I'm going to press multi-track recorder. I'm then faced with 16 channels or 16 parts that we can record. Now by default, tracks 9 to 16 will record the automatic part. So the automatic drums, bass and all the other bits that make up that particular accompaniment. So I'm going to use that because that's going to save us a lot of time. You know, if you're doing a multi-track recording, some people will start and they'll program the drum part using the keys as drums. They'll program the bass line and everything. That's a whole nother level of skill to be able to do that. We're going to cut a few corners here just to achieve the result we want. So I'm going to set track 9 through to 16 to record. So I know that will capture the auto accompaniment. So we'll be putting all the right chord changes in the right place. We can make sure we do all our drum fills where we want them because that's how it will then play back. And I'm going to arm track 1, which by default will record right 1 on the Genos here. We're going to use that as a guide track. And what I mean by that is when we play back, it gives us something to add the overdub to. If that guide track wasn't there, again, you've got to be a little bit more skillful because you've got to be able to picture what that lead track is doing and then put all the fiddly bits in between. Having that guide track there gives you something to play to. So let's start the recording. Basically, I'm going to use intro 2 and synchro start. So the minute I touch the keys, it'll start to record a little song called Blue Moon. So there we have it. That's our very straightforward recording, really. Again, as with so many of the examples I'm trying to give you, I'm stuck to a single note on the right hand. We can embellish that piano part when we play live to what we're about to add now, but just for the sakes of getting a recording, and don't worry, if you go a little bit wrong with the right hand, that's the bit I'm actually going to take back out afterwards. So as long as you've got the basics, the important bit on that was to get the chords right and the drum changes, etc. So if I press the stop button, that's now saved that, and we can press play. I just wanted to leave it to check we'd captured the piano part, which we have. So what do we need to do now? Let's this time set track 2 onto record. Now I've spotted something. By default it says we're going to record right 1. Well, we've already done right 1, so press the little icon and we've got the option now. Do we want to record right 1, right 2, right 3, or the left hand? I want to record right 2, so press OK. And actually the icon's changed now. We've got a nice little picture of the jazz guitar because that is the sound we chose earlier. So what we're going to do now is press play. All that's recording is now whatever I do on the jazz guitar. The rest will play back as we played it a minute ago. So press play. So there we go. Let's just press stop there and that will now store that. So we've achieved our little overdub. Now the trick with this is not to overdo it. If you see, I didn't try and play all of the time. You want instruments to come in and out, and like I said, the biggest danger is not knowing when to stop. Of course I could go on and I could record other instruments on top. I could use right 3. The sky's the limit, but if you're not careful you end up with just a mass of notes. So first of all, let's just play that back. Make sure we've captured the piano and the guitar. Great. You know, you might be happy with that and you might want to save that and impress your friends with it, you know. What you might want to do is now mute. So just tick the little green bar at the top, right 1, and let's go back to our piano sound here. And I'm going to switch off the accompaniment so I've got piano across the whole keyboard. Now I could play piano style back to that little backing that we've got. need to go on. But you can have some great fun with this, particularly if you can find some pieces that are scored out where you can see there's distinctly two parts, then record both parts in and then end up taking one of the parts out. I could go on, I could now just save that and store that. Obviously I can come back to it a later date, I can add things, I can re-record tracks. So if I wasn't 100% happy, which I wasn't with that jazz guitar, I could come back when I'm a bit fresh the next day and do it again. Experiment, have some fun. Next time I'll show you how to do an audio recording. Your homework for this month is to have a go at the simplest thing you can find, try and add another track to it. You'll have great fun. And if anybody's very anti this multi-tracking, believe me, when you try it, doesn't half give you a lift, and it's just wonderful. So on with the next bit of the show. I think what they normally do at this point on the television is give out a warning that it may contain scenes that some people may find disturbing, because we got Mike Hall back with us again. He never ceases to amaze me. His enthusiasm, it overshadows all of us really. He oozes music, he loves it. And he's got a piece for you this month from a show, from a film actually, and it was famously sung by Doris Day in the film. It's a little thing called the Deadwood Stage. So sit back, enjoy the wonderful Mr. Mike Hall on his Korg PA 1000. Well, moving on to this next section. When I was putting the thing about morning in Cornwall together, you know, I sat and I looked at the list of sounds available, not just on the Korg, but on the Genos, even on the more budget instruments. We're now confronted with this massive list of sounds, and it started me thinking, what do all these names mean? Because we get so many different electric pianos, so many guitars, so many different strings. So in this next section, I'm just going to give you a tip, particularly useful if you have a Genos, but sit back and watch it even if you don't, because you will get some ideas of how to work out how to use these sounds. Because like we said in the morning at Cornwall, it's not about how well you play, it's about actually how well you know your instrument and getting the instrument to work for you rather than battling against it. And if you can get to that point, you'll get some amazing results. And part of that is understanding what all these different sounds are and when they should be used. So I hope you find this next section interesting. So just carrying on from that little piece, Morning in Cornwall, there was one other element that we didn't talk about, because when you're playing a melody line, there are three elements I want to look at. The first element, and probably the most important element, are getting the right notes. So, of course, we practice the melody and we get that correct. The second thing, which we just talked about, is getting that sound exactly and as most accurately as we can for what we want. So, right notes, right sound. Then there's the third bit, and this is far from the least important bit. It's how you use that sound and how you play those notes. Now, I think Eric Morecambe came up with that famous phrase that he played all the right notes but not necessarily in the right order. Well, this is a similar thing. You can play all the right notes, but it still doesn't quite sound right. Now, let me expand on that. If you take an instrument like a brass or a woodwind instrument, the person playing that instrument will need to breathe. They need to take pauses. You can't have somebody blowing a trumpet, because eventually their cheeks just puff out if they don't breathe back in, and eventually they cease to be, because they need to take a breath in. Therefore, they will need to take a pause. Now, my organ teacher, as it was then, taught me one thing, and it's stuck with me ever since. The hardest thing to do when you're playing an organ, a keyboard, a piano, is to do nothing. But sometimes the most important thing you can do is do nothing. It's those pauses that make it so musical at the end of the day. So I'm going to give you a quick example, right and wrong. So we're going to start by showing you it played in the wrong way. Hopefully I'm going to get all the right notes, famous last words, but I'm going to do it without any thought to the phrasing at all. So I've got my sound right. I've chosen a nice little flugelhorn sound, and I've put that delay on that we used on the panpipe. So I've got a very nice sort of laid back late night flugelhorn type sound. I'm going to play a little piece, you'll all know it, called Yesterday, but I'm not going to give any thought to the phrasing, so there won't be any pauses, there won't be any breaths. Just have a listen, see what you think. Okay, so 2 out of 3 of our elements are right, in my opinion anyway. We've got the right notes and we got the right sound, but something about it sounded unnatural to me. The first thing, and the most important thing, is that flugelhorn player would have died by about bar 4 because he would have just run out of breath completely. He has to take pauses, like I said. If you look, you know, when you're doing a little run and hold that long note to then just carry on, it's wrong. And if you follow this little rule I'm going to tell you now, it just will make your playing a lot more musical. Now with a piece like Yesterday, actually the simplest way is to find a copy of the music that's got the words on it and look for the punctuation marks. If you see full stops, commas, that's normally when a singer would take a breath, because just like we do with sentences and paragraphs, we break paragraphs down into sentences, and that's what you're doing with a piece of music. You break your verse, which is a paragraph. You then need to break that down into bite-sized pieces or sentences. And you know, when we talk, we take pauses and we breathe in, and it's normally when you're writing it down, that's where commas and full stops appear. So if you've got lyrics, look for the punctuation marks. 9 cases out of 10, that's when a singer would take a breath. So just lift your hand. Yeah, if you've just done a long run, before you just play the next note, just a simple little off and back on. It's enough time for that instrumentalist to have taken the breath. So there's the 3 elements. If you can do them, they're not difficult to do, but as I say with all these things, you need to put a little bit of effort in and do some practice. Have a go, you will find it rewarding, and it will just lift your music to that next level. So I'm going to do it again now. Listen for the phrasing. Some of the lift-offs are quite obvious. Some of them are very subtle. So where I've played a little run-up, just listen. There might be just a little lift on the notes, just breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. So let's play it again, hopefully this time with all 3 elements correct. Okay, I hope you will agree. It's very subtle, but it's made a huge difference to the music. So have a practice, particularly when you're using solo instruments like brass and woodwind. Practice your phrasing. Hope you enjoyed that. So on to the final section for this month. Again, I can't believe where the hour's gone, but this again comes back to that opening piece of Morning in Cornwall, and what I want to talk to you about, maybe for the next 10 minutes, is phrasing. How, you know, once we've created our sound or we've selected our sound from these massive list of sounds, once we know we've got the right one, it's how we then use that sound that really matters. So that's what this next section's about. It's about phrasing the melody in particular, and the difference it can make to your music. Sit back and enjoy. So we talked earlier, when we did that little thing with Morning in Cornwall, we talked about using sounds and using sounds in the right way, and that started me thinking about another thing. You know, I'm all too aware that sometimes as a sort of professional player who's involved in the trade, sometimes we take things for granted, and because we understand what it means, sometimes you can easily fall into that trap of assuming that a customer knows the same. Let me give you a prime example. I'm going to go to the bank here of acoustic guitars. Now, a lot of people, and this isn't a criticism, but they won't know the difference between a concert guitar, Spanish guitar, steel strung guitar, resonator guitar. What do they all mean? Well, there is a fantastic feature on the Genos here, and it's right in the blue section at the top of the screen, and it says demo, and it is as simple as this. Choose a sound. So what does concert guitar mean? Well, I happen to know that when it talks about concert guitar, they're talking about a nylon strung guitar. Do you all remember John Williams, the classical guitar player? It's that type of guitar sound. And because the strings are nylon as opposed to steel, you get a softer overall sound. So what does concert guitar sound like? So we press concert guitar and we press demo. There you go. Look, Mum, no hands. It's brilliant because not only does it show you the style of music that you would expect to use a concert guitar for, but it includes all those little nuances, the little slides and the note offs that you can hear there. So what about if we went to Spanish guitar? Well, I can tell you it's still a nylon strung guitar, but it's got a little bit of a brighter sound than the concert guitar. And in some ways, the strings are a little bit looser, if that makes sense. So you tend to get a little bit more noise going on like this. So we'll choose Spanish guitar. There we go. So it is brighter than the concert guitar. If we go to flamenco guitar, then we're going to hear a lot more noises because of the way flamenco guitar is played, like this. Now, what does steel strung? Well, steel strung is exactly the same type of guitar, but obviously the strings are steel. So we get a much brighter, and this is the sort of folk guitar or pop guitar, you know, when you see the guys with the wooden guitars where they strum it. But we've got three different choices. We've got steel acoustic finger, steel acoustic pick, and steel thumb pick. Now, acoustic finger is literally when it's played with the fingers, so that will probably be the softest of all the steel strung sounds. Let's give it a try. Now, if we choose the steel acoustic pick, that's when you use the little plectrum to play it, so it'd probably be a little bit more bright and a little bit more prominent. Now, there's another great guitar on here, and to a lot of people, you read the word, it doesn't mean anything. Resonator guitar. Well, I'm going to put a picture up on the screen of a resonator guitar. It's that Nashville country and blues type guitar. It's actually metal, and it's got an unusual sort of grill on the front, and it makes a great sound, and it literally, that you'll hear the sound resonate, and lots of slides, because they actually use like a little glass tube or a metal tube to achieve slides up the string, and it gives it that really distinctive blues and country sound like this. It's a really great sound for that type of music. Let's just go on to one other now, a 12-string guitar. Well, that's the same as the 6-string steel guitar that we had, the steel acoustic, but literally there are 2 strings for each note, so we're doubling up on the number of strings, and because of that you get a very nice chorus effect, because some of the strings are tuned an octave apart, so you actually get this lovely chorus, slightly detuned sound, because having had one myself, I struggle to keep 6 strings in tune on a guitar, so when I've got 12 it becomes a little bit more haphazard. So you never ever get and keep a 12 string so perfectly in tune, and that's what gives it that distinctive sound. Think people like John Denver, the Seekers, you know, if you remember that great band, they were real big ambassadors of the 12 string guitar, and it was very distinctive to their sound. So let's take the 12 string strum and like this. It is a great sound. So this little demo idea, I've just picked guitars out there because there are lots of names of lots of sounds that don't mean anything. You know, go to electric pianos. What does a 70s suitcase clean mean as opposed to a 70s suitcase warm one? 70s suitcase phase. I'm having trouble saying it, let alone trying them all. You've got 70s ambience EP. Go through them and have a listen. Those sounds will generate particular tunes to you. Do the same with the pianos, the strings, and you will learn so much more about your instrument. So another little quick tip there on how to audition these different sounds. On things like the Korg, if you don't have the demo, just go through and try them sound by sound and try to get a particular tune in your head, because often that will give you the style of music that particular sound suits. So I hope you enjoyed that little tip, using the demo to audition your sounds. Well, there you go. That's another hour finished. I'll just put the last bits of editing together and then it'll be on its way to you. I really hope you've enjoyed it. As you've noticed, a lot of topics covered this month, I've said, have come from requests from customers. So please, if you have something that you're struggling with or something in particular that you would like us to cover, then just drop us an email and we will do our best to include it, if not in the next program, in one of the future programs. We look forward to seeing you back in December for our little Christmas one. I'm just going to go and get the Father Christmas outfit ready, and we'll have some nice Christmas music for you. So in the meantime, take care. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you very soon.